All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Nashville, Tennessee. That's right, I'm in Nashville. I am in Nashville at the Israel Summit, sponsored by Keep God's Land and the Israel guys and Hayovel. And this is a conference of mostly pro-Israel Gentiles, lovers of Israel from the nations. And I am very honored to be here as one of the keynote speakers. And I'm having a great time because I am connecting with amazing energy of not just pro-Israel Gentiles. Everybody says, oh, there's the Christians, oh, there's the evangelicals. Forget all that stuff. These are people who are searching for God, and they're searching for Israel, for God's channeling of His light through Israel. And the most important thing here, and this may sound funny, but these folks are so smart that they get that the key political issue is holding on to Judea and Samaria, the heartland of the Jewish people. You know what? In fact, I'm going to add that. I have a final speech that I'm giving tonight. I'm going to add that note. I'm going to add that note that is the fight. That's what makes it. That's what makes it so unique. This conference, because it's not only like people are walking around with T-shirts that say West Bank crossed out and says Judea and Samaria, the heartland of the Holy Land. That's my line. So it's really fun and it's interesting, and I'll tell you, like, I have not been out of the land, the Holy Land of Israel, for 6 months because of the war, the continuing war, and so what a special thing it is to come here, only to come to people who are celebrating the rights of Jewish people in the land of Israel, and again the projection of God's light through the story of Israel, specifically the story of Judea and Samaria, specifically through people called the so-called settlers. And that's very powerful. It's very powerful. Very powerful combination of factors that are making this conference so special to me. And I'm going to play you some of my speaking from this conference, from the Israel Summit, in just a few minutes. And before I do that, I want to wish you guys a Mazel Tov and a happy Pesach, because today is second Pesach. This is a biblical precept, which is for those very people who were not able to fulfill the commandment of Passover in its proper time because they were ritually unclean because they had touched a dead body. And they were exempted from fulfilling the mitzvah of Passover. But they said to God, they said to Moses, can you ask God for us? Because while we're exempted, but we want the mitzvah. We want to be close to you, God. They asked to be close. They said, yeah, we're exempted, but that's not enough for me. I know I'm exempted. And today at the conference, when I'm going to come up and speak, I'm going to mention this very concept, which is there are people who I call them Pesach Sheni, Jews and Gentiles, people who are like, yeah, I know I'm exempted, but I want more. I want to be closer to you, God. That is the type of people we are. Anybody who's listening to the show is the type of person who says, yeah, I don't have to, but I want to so much, God. Please bring me closer to you. Please give me strength to follow you more nearly, to quote it. Okay, to fight for you, to see you in my life, and to take on another commandment and another level. It doesn't make it easier. My life doesn't become easier from fulfilling your commandments and asking to be closer to you. In fact, it makes it harder and more challenging, and not everybody understands. But that's the kind of people we are. That's the kind of person you are, if you're listening to this show. And I've been blessed by so many people around here telling me that the show matters to them and that Malka's voice matters to them, and I appreciate that so much. And in fact, we'll also have a segment with Malka. She was not at the conference with me here in Tennessee. So I'm going to play you that in just a second. Before I play you my speech, which I felt had an important message, I just want to ask for your blessings to get back home to the land of Israel, to get back home to Lag BaOmer, to celebrate in Meron. We can't go to Meron this year because Meron is under rocket fire. Under rocket fire. By our enemies. And we've got to send that rocket fire right back to them. And there should be zero reason why next year we're not celebrating in Meron and in the north of Israel and clear out the dens of jihadism that are arraigned against us, and may God give us the strength. And I'm going up north, not to Meron, but hopefully to Tzfat, and to speak on Shabbat on Tzfat, and I'm very excited to do that. But I got a long way to traverse. I've got to get from Tennessee to Miami, and from Miami to Israel, and from the airport to my house, and from my house up to the north, and there's a lot of traveling. So Bezrat Hashem, Bezrat Shemaim, I should have the zchut to come in front of Rabbi Shimon or close to Rabbi Shimon and celebrate with the Jewish people the amazing holiday of Lag BaOmer, which is about the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, about the victory of Torah over the Greco-Romans, the Romans, and our eventual victory in the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. Okay, without further ado, here is my keynote speech at the first night of the Israel Summit here right outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
Yishai Fleisher is the international spokesperson of the Jewish community of Hebron. Y'all remember, that's King David's first capital. And the home of the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs. As Yishai likes to say, the mamas and the papas. He is also an elected chairman in the largest Jewish community in Judea called Efrat. Yishai is host of the popular weekly English podcast and YouTube channel on the topics of Israel, Judaism, and the Middle East. I'm a weekly listener. You should be too. He is a rabbi, a graduate of the Cardozo Law School in New York City, a former paratrooper, and continues to serve in the IDF reserves, meaning he's been in full gear lately. Tonight, he's also going to be in full gear in a different kind of way, but Yishai Fleisher, welcome Yishai Fleisher to the stage.
All right, stay on your feet for a second. Stay on your feet for just a second. Last week, I don't know if you caught it, I was on Piers Morgan. Did some of you see that? I was pretty nervous. Even though I'm used to audiences and media, I was a little bit nervous. And then I did a little exercise. I thought about the movie that we just saw. I thought about all those people, and I felt their screams. I felt their tears. I let my knuckles get white. I got myself angry. I got myself feeling that I want to defend them, that I want to fight for them, that I don't want to let their voice go down without a fight. And I said, I'm fighting for you now. Let's take a second right now to just remember all those people. If we have a name in our heart, that's good. If not, just a general sense of what happened. But let's make a little declaration right now in our heart that we will not let their death be in vain. That's all we have to do. If we make their death count, then they would have died for something. If we let them go in silence, it's like it was worthless. They just were murdered. No, they will have woken us up. We will give them that honor. We will give their blood that honor. So we thank you, God Almighty, as my friend Ari said, for October 7th, for the awakening of October 7th. And give us the strength, God, to honor their death, to honor their blood by making it meaningful. Amen. Take a seat. Thank you very much to Ayovel. Thank you to the Israel guys. Can I tell you what I love about Hayovel? Action. I love action. I love action. My whole life is about loving action. I could have been a lawyer in New York City, and that's okay. There's action there, but I wanted to be in Judea. And I've spoken to many non-Jewish groups, many Christian groups. Some of them come to Israel and sit all week in a hotel and hear important lectures from important people. And that's nice. That's real nice. But as I was walking around the floor before, people were saying to me, hey, Yishai, I came to work with you in Hebron. I cleaned up the tomb of Ruth and Yishai, Ruth and Jesse. My son was there. My son stubbed his toe there. He bled in Hebron. Because the Israel guys in Hayovel are about action, about pruning those vineyards in Samaria. That's action. Having dirt underneath your fingernails, the dirt of the land of Israel, that's action. That's what I love about these guys. And I'm friends with people of action. So I want to thank you so much, Israel guys, Hayovel, the Wallers, for being people of action and letting me be part of being part of your action and you being part of my action. Thank you. I want to thank a lot of other action people here. Troy Miller, my good friend Julie Cerrone, Michelle Bachman, Governor Bill Lee, Pastor Stearns, and many other pastors that I heard before that are part of this action. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't give a real man of action a big applause, and that's Dave Ramsey, for being a man who stepped it up. And I want to say that we're all in his debt, but he doesn't like debt. So the way we're going to repay that debt to Dave and his wife is that we're going to be people of action. We're going to take this, push it forward, move it forward. You know, I asked him today, I said, why do you keep doing what you're doing? He says, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still pushing it out. But he didn't say it, but I could tell in his eye, he's a man of action. He wants to help other people live better lives. He still wants to push it out there. And so the way we're going to repay the debt to Dave is that we're going to be people of action. That's what this talk is about today. It's about action. First thing, Victor Hugo once said, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Are you familiar with that phrase? Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Sometimes an idea just ripens. But today in Nashville, we're going to say, nothing is more powerful than a prophecy whose time has come. We are living in a time of prophecy. We're living in a time of the most amazing prophecy. God said over 2,000 years ago that the Jewish people are going to be dispersed. And they're going to touch all the different nations. They're going to be out there. They're going to learn something. They're going to give something. And you know what I call that? I call that the time of the tabernacle. The tabernacle is like a temple, but it's roving, right? It roves around. It moves around. It stops here. It stops there. Cloud lifts. You go. That's the tabernacle. That's the last 2,000 years. The last 2,000 years have been years of tabernacle. But now God says, let's traverse from tabernacle to temple. Jerusalem is the center. Jerusalem is the heart. He says it's time. I have chosen it. Why? I don't know. But he has chosen it. That the time is now to return to the land of Israel and to rebuild Jerusalem. He has chosen it. The prophecy that the folks that work with me in Hebron, you have been with me in Hebron, we read this verse from Isaiah 11, chapter 11, verse 10. V'haya bayom hahu, it'll be on that day, shoresh Yishai, the root of Jesse, asher omed lenes amim, which stands as a banner for all peoples. Elav goyim yidroshu, the nations shall seek him out, shall yearn for him. V'ayta menuchato kavod, and his final resting place shall be honorable, shall be glorious. We are coming from the nations. That's the time of this prophecy. The prophecy whose time has come, that the nations want to get close to Israel. You know, when Jewish people are in dispersion, so you go to France, and you're in dispersion in France, so France says to you, okay, learn the Napoleonic Code, learn our liberté, learn our stuff. You come to America, they say, our founding fathers, learn about Lincoln, learn about Jefferson, learn about these things. But when God brings us back to the land, the nations turn their ear and they say, hey, what do you have to say? There's something coming out of Zion. If he's bringing you back to the land of Israel, that means that you have something to say to us. That is the time that we're living in. What is that big idea? Can you give me one word that says what is that big that big prophecy that is coming down right now that the time has come? What is that big moment? What is it? What's the one word? That one word is revelation. God is revealing himself. The greatest revelation since the splitting of the Red Sea was the 6-day war. God said, we were talking about us saying Hineni. God's like, Hineni, here I am. He reached his hand down. He's like, Jewish people back in the land of Israel. And gosh, we do everything to not notice him. But he's like, I'm here. I am here. The Bible tells us not to trust our eyes. You know what I'm talking about. You got to watch out. You can't eat every cookie you see. You know what I'm talking about. You got to watch out. You can't trust your eyes, except for one thing you could trust your eyes on. It says also in the book of Isaiah, eye to eye shall God be seen in Zion. When you see Jerusalem, believe it. Believe it. There's a part of Jerusalem where I drive visitors. I go, you see this? You can see now all of Jerusalem from here. I say, this is the biggest Jerusalem that ever existed. This is the big one. Look at it. There is no greater revelation than Jerusalem on this earth, than the rebuilding of Jerusalem. That is God's revelation. That's another word for revelation. You want to say another word for revelation? Just say Jerusalem. By the way, I was going to say this later in the talk, but I'll say it now. I have a simple suggestion for everybody here. Do you know what direction Jerusalem is in your house? You know exactly? Turn your heart to Jerusalem when you pray. That's what we do. I'm always taking out my app. Where's that Jerusalem? Where's that Jerusalem? I turn my heart towards Jerusalem. There was a rabbi who was asked once by a soldier who was going to be conscripted to the Russian army for like 25 years. They were Cantonists, it was called. He said, Rabbi, I can't do anything. I won't be able to do anything. He said, just turn your heart towards Jerusalem. If you could do one thing, turn your heart towards Jerusalem. There are forces out there that want to silence this revelation. And that's why this conference is not just about Israel anymore. I thought it was going to be about Israel. I was coming to speak to you about Israel. But it turns out that this conference is about America. I thought I was going to talk to you about Israel. I didn't know that all kinds of forces were going to shut you down, not let you hear these talks, not let you have freedom of speech, freedom of congregation, freedom of religion. I realized that this conference is really actually about America, about your future. There are forces out there that want to silence us. So we're going to fight through that. Now, the next part of this talk, I'm going to go through the past, the present, and the future. Okay? You ready? All right. The past. There were great men and women whose mamas read them the Bible. When you read the kids the Bible, when the mamas read the kids the Bible, you get healthy generations. At the very moment of the apex of British power, when the British were in charge of, the sun never set on the British Empire. At that moment, there were men who were Bible-believing folks. They were Christian folks who were like, wait a minute, we're the most powerful nation on earth. What do we use this for? I know. Let's restore the Jewish people to the land of Israel. It was called restorationism. Restorationism. These men included Lord Arthur Balfour and Lloyd George, and I read a lot about them. And you know what? Most important aspect of their life? Their mamas read them the Bible. They knew the Bible. And they sought to restore Israel to its rightful place, to recognize Jewish rights in Judea. And then immediately when they decided to do that, that's when England beat back the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, liberated Jerusalem. General Allenby got off his horse. If you remember, Kaiser Wilhelm II was coming into Jerusalem a few years previous. When he came with his horse to the old city walls, he's like, I'm not getting off my horse. Break the walls. Break the walls of Jerusalem. Me and my horse are coming in. They literally broke the walls. You know where Jaffa Gate is, where you could drive in? That's where Kaiser Wilhelm broke the walls of the old city. When Allenby came, it was Hanukkah 1917. When he came, he got off of his horse in order to show the difference. And he walked in, holding his horse, into the Jaffa Gate to liberate Jerusalem and to restore it to the Jewish people. Recently, we had a president named Donald Trump. He recognized Jewish rights in Judea. He was like, you know what? I think we should tell the world. I think the Jewish people are from Judea, and America should recognize that. He did that. He also shrank the UN and other forces that want to shrink Israel. There's, by the way, I have a new concept called Israel shrinkers. The Biden administration, they're Israel shrinkers. I don't know if he wants to destroy Israel, but he certainly wants to shrink it. That's for sure. There's Israel shrinkers out there. President Trump was not an Israel shrinker. He also helped, actually, as at the last days of his presidency, allowed for a new concept to come into this world, a brilliant concept. It was called the Abraham Accords. Abraham Accords. Why is that important? The very name Abraham Accords was one of the most important things about the Abraham Accords. Okay? By the way, who came up with the name Abraham Accords? It was like a Puerto Rican 3-star general who ran into the room and is like, hey, I think this thing that we're about to do should have a name, and I think it should be the Abraham Accords. And President Trump was like, shouldn't it be the Trump Accords? And he's like, Abraham Accords. All right, Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords is a fight against the very biggest lie that's out there, is that the Jewish people are colonialists, are thieves of the land. And so therefore, Abraham Accords says, no, this is an ancient people from this land. So the Abraham Accords has a vision for peace. You want a vision for peace? People ask me all the time, what's your vision for peace? I get that all the time. I say to them, it's so simple. People don't want to hear common sense. So I say to them, here's some common sense. A Jewish people on their land, surrounded by Arab peoples on their land, working together for the Abrahamic region. Simple, right? A strong Israel in a region with other peoples living in their land. Good. They should live on their land. Let's work together for regional peace. Of course, anti-jihad. We'll get to that. The Abraham Accords is a vision for that. So that is some of the past great people who did good things for Israel. But today, we have a day where the Bible is forgotten. Actually, some people are forcing it to be forgotten. I want to remind you that at Harvard, about 200 years ago, they used to study the Bible in Hebrew. In Hebrew at Harvard. I dare you to go to Harvard campus today and ask people about basic Bible literacy. They won't know it. They don't know it. We live in a time where Israel is portrayed as a villain, where the American government seeks to shrink Israel, pays her enemies billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. The Obama and Biden administration sent over $250 billion plus, billion with a B, to Iran while they were calling for the destruction of Israel. We also have a questionable axis emerging in this world. China, Russia, Iran, and maybe even parts of this country are not on the side of goodness and morality. And that's an axis that's starting to control this world. With America not being a strong pillar, the world is tilting towards evil. That's not so great. What about Israel? Israel was founded in secular socialism by Jews who were far away from God. Why did God create Israel through secular socialism? Why did God use totally, seemingly godless people to move the ball forward? Well, maybe he needed the Jewish people to come out of 2,000 years of exile and learn about farming and military and language and economy. We needed to breed back in those characteristic traits. And so God started Israel off through a secular national state. And now we are bringing the faith back. We are bringing it back. We are raising children. The next generation of Israelis is moving more towards the nationalistic, the Torah, the God-believing. That's right. It's moving in the right direction. But the old secular guard is fighting us. They have given the heartland away to our enemies, empowered them. They told us it would bring peace. They told us that leaving Gaza would be good for our security. We were in Gaza in 2005. My wife and I, we were down there protesting, make sure that Israel will not leave Gaza. And you know what the Arabs there were telling us? Don't leave. You don't understand. Oh, did I mention Michelle Bachman? Did I mention? God bless you as well. I hope I mentioned you. If not, God bless you for all your good work. I follow you closely. Thank you. The Arabs there were saying to us, don't leave. You don't understand who's going to take over this place. Please don't leave. We need you here. The Arabs said I remember their hands through the fences, holding on and saying to me, you don't understand what's coming. We fought them in Gaza and we lost. In fact, listen to this. Israel today is 70% smaller than when I was born. Our economy has quadrupled, our peoplehood has doubled, but our land mass has shrunken by about 70%. We gave away the Sinai. Jimmy Carter thought it was a very good idea to give away the Sinai. And we became much, much weaker through that. The Arabs, by the way, laugh at this. When you talk to the Arabs, you know what they say? They say to me every time, they say to me, yes, Yishai, but you are shrinking. You have left Sinai, you have left Gaza. That's how they say Gaza. You have left the West Bank. You have left Jerusalem, parts of Jerusalem. You left South Lebanon. You are shrinking. And inshallah, with the help of God, you'll be gone. If you don't understand that that's behind the Arab mindset, you don't understand anything. If you think that compromise is beautiful, you are being a total, Western-minded person in the Middle East. You don't get it. In their mind, you're shrinking and you'll be gone soon. Don't do it. It doesn't work. But I still think that our trajectory is healthy. I think that Israeli youth is moving in the right direction. And here, we talked a little bit about the past. We talked about the present. Let's talk a little bit about the future. I'm about to give you 7 ideas for how we have to move it forward, all right? You ready? I'm going to test you on this afterwards. So here we go. The future is ours to shape, but we cannot forsake the battles that we got to face. They're ahead of us. The first thing is we have to fight for, number 1, are you following this? Number 1, biblical literacy in the U.S. and everywhere. Bring back the Bible. You got to bring back the Bible. Nothing is going to go in the right direction if you don't bring back the Bible. Bring back the Bible, you'll have youth with health. Don't bring back the Bible, they're going to be totally off kilter and without a basis for a moral life. What's the most important book of the Bible? We might disagree, but I think we can agree. You know my line with Christians? Let's agree to agree. We got a lot we can agree on, right? There's one book that I recommend for everybody. It's called the book of Genesis. It's a good place to begin, at Genesis. Everybody's got to know the book of Genesis. I want to tell you something. When I'm in the army, I ask my buddies in the army, some of the best guys, I say to them, who was the wife of Isaac? Israelis, commanders, paratroopers, they don't know. They don't know. I say to them, what's the month, the Hebrew month that we're in? They don't know. They don't know basic Bible. So we got to bring back biblical literacy. How am I going to fight for Hebron if you don't know that Hebron is the tomb of the mamas and the papas? And you're going to know that by reading the book of Genesis. So number 1 is biblical literacy. Very simple. Number 2, Israel must identify itself with the Bible. I'm working on a project to rename Route 60, the central highway in Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank. We have a beautiful highway. It touches 7 holy cities. The 7 holy cities are Beersheba, right? Hebron, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Bethel, Shiloh, and Shechem. One road. I keep on telling them this is an American idea. It's like Route 66, right? It's a great thing. You know, you have a song, Route 66. You have a show called Route 66. All right? We've got a highway called Route 60, and I need your help. Help me with these things. I need to make like more merchandise. I want to be more like America when it comes to these things, you know? I was in Texas. I bought like Route 66 merchandise. I showed everybody. I'm like, we got to do this. This is the biblical highway. We have to identify ourselves. When you come into the Israeli airport, I judge places by its airport. That's how I judge places. If when you land in New York, you know you're in New York. You land in Texas, you know you're in Texas. When you land in New Jersey, you're like, I don't know where I am exactly, okay? I'm from New Jersey. That's okay. When you land in Israel, you're like, you're not exactly sure where you are because it doesn't say to you you're in the land of the Bible. Like the first thing you meet is like Israeli like beers and snacks and stuff. Like they're not marketing it well, okay? When you land in Australia, you know you're in Australia. They sell you a didgeridoo and a wombat and a kangaroo the minute you get out of the airplane, all right? We got to be like that. We got to help Israel identify with the Bible. So that's number 2. Number 3, here's a very simple piece of information which is important for you and your leadership. A strong Israel is good. A strong Israel is good for the region. A bigger Israel means less jihad, which is good for the Arabs. A bigger Israel means more Abraham Accords because the Arabs respect strength. Bigger Israel is good. Israel has to see itself as a power militarily in the region. I want to see Israeli ships patrolling all the way to the Persian Gulf and in the Indian Sea. I want to partner up with India. We'll talk about that in a second. I want a big Israel, a big one. I wanted to make sure that the bad guys like the folks in Yemen are in control and the pirates in Somalia. I want to make sure that those guys are batted down for the good of the whole region. Who's going to do it? It's got to be Israel. Israel's got to grow into the boots of being a big country. It's just got to accept that. It's got to be strong economically. It's got to be strong in tourism. By the way, how many tourists does Israel get a year? About 4 million the best year. How many does Turkey get a year? 54 million. Hello, Israel, wake up. It's time to be the Holy Land that everybody wants to come visit. Okay? You got to own that. Own your Holy Land status and make sure it's safe and make it a little cheaper as well. That would help also. Okay, so the first one was biblical literacy. Second thing, Israel must identify itself with the Bible. 3 is that Israel has to be big. Big is good. I don't have to tell you guys. Big is good. Look at this. Dave, am I right? Big is good, right? Number 4, this is very important for Michelle and the company. We have an axis forming today. That axis is of countries that are pro-family, pro-God, pro-conservative values, pro-nationalism, pro-patriotism, pro-God, pro-Bible, and anti-jihad. There is an axis forming. It's from Geert Wilders in Holland. Okay? That's how you pronounce his name, by the way, not Geert. It's India. That's anti-jihad. It's Modi in India, who sat on an event where they were celebrating that a Hindu shrine has come over a Muslim mosque that came over a Hindu shrine. Okay? They were celebrating that they came back and overcame this Muslim mosque that took over their Hindu shrine. Does that sound familiar? Is there a place where there's like a Jewish shrine and now there's like a Muslim shrine and we should be celebrating a Jewish shrine again? I don't know. Oh yeah. There's other countries in this axis: Poland, Hungary, UAE, and the healthy part of America. America's like 2 countries today. The healthy America's on the right side of things. So that axis needs to grow. I got to tell you something. I work with Israeli politicians. I tell them there's an axis. They're like, lo מעניין אותי. It's not interesting to me. I don't care. Only Israel. I'm like, stop being so damn provincial, okay? There's people around the world that want to partner up with this. So Israel, you got to also see that you're part of an axis today. Pro-God, pro-Bible, anti-jihad. There's a whole bunch of us. We come from a little bit different ways. Like Poland, they're not exactly, they're Catholic. It's different, but they are anti-jihad, pro-family, pro-nationalism. They're a strong country today. Let's be friendly and let's make that axis strong. Number 5. Here's an interesting one for you. The development of a more Israel-centered faith for the nations, with Jerusalem at its heart, with pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Guys, I read the book of Zechariah. He says you guys are supposed to come once a year during the holiday of Sukkot, of booths. Am I right? Chapter 14. Am I right? Zechariah. Is it there or not? We need a religion, and I heard this also before, we need, let's put it this way, a shift, a more Israel-centered religion. And I have a name for it. It's called Abrahamic. Can we get together on Abraham? Can we say there is a man that we could all get together around Abraham? I want to make a t-shirt that says, I'm Abrahamic. I'm Abrahamic. I'm all about Abrahamic. I'm following that path. I go back to the book of Genesis. I like the Abrahamic chords, the Abrahamic region. I'm Abrahamic. I pray towards Jerusalem. So that's another thing. That's up to you to work it out a little bit. It needs to be a tweak, a more Israel-centered a faith, a way of worshiping. Number 6. How many people here in this room are under 30? Please raise your hand. All right, give him a round of applause. Please, come on. Number 6 is the youth. We got to work on the next generation. It is a fact that young Americans coming from biblical homes are losing it. It's really hard to defeat the Instagrams and the TikToks. Studies have shown that TikTok shows you 100 or up to 1,000 to 1 pro-Hamas messages than to Israel messages. They're out there working to brainwash your kids. They've stolen your campuses. It's real. You got to get off your whatever and realize this is not a joke. They're taking over the kids' minds. Everybody in this room has got to make it an absolute priority. The youth. And if we're just talking amongst ourselves, God bless all of you guys, but if we're not talking about the youth, then we lost. Make a decision right now for the sake of the people that died that we're going to work on the youth. We're going to turn them on. We're going to connect them. We're going to make sure they fly to Israel, see the real thing. We're going to connect them all the way to the Bible. We're going to make sure they know Genesis. We're going to talk about it at the table. We're going to turn off the screens and get back to biblical literacy and get our kids back. Finally, number 7, I was going to be cute, and I said 7 is the holy number. That's the number of the Sabbath. I said, remember Hashem. But then I remembered in Judaism, do you know we say that there's something comes before Torah? Do you know what comes before Torah? Does anybody know? That's right. In English, common sense. Common sense comes before Torah, according to Judaism. First, you got to have common sense. If you don't have common sense, you're not going to have Torah. Israel, stop giving your land away to your enemies. That's dumb, okay? Don't do it. That's just common sense. Your enemies are going to take away your land. Then they're going to build forward bases of jihadism and try to destroy you. Don't give away your land. That's dumb. It doesn't work. Don't try to sell it to me. I love these new ideas. Did you hear Gaza is going to be now taken over by the Palestinian Authority? Gosh, you got to be really smart to figure that one out. That's how it happened in the first place. In 2005, we gave it to the PA. And they elected Hamas. And that's what we got. So come on. Here in America, we got to elect good people. You got to elect good people. I think, Michelle, there should be like a contract with politicians. Be like, are you going to sign this pro-Israel contract? No, we don't want you. This is what, do you believe in these things? Yes? Good. We got to elect good people on every level. On every level, including city and municipal level, every single level. All right, and with that, I want to tell you that God may God be with us. This is not only a feel-good conference. Okay, this is a feel-good conference, but there's more than just feeling good. We got to know that we have arrived for a time such as this. For a time such as this. I want to bless you that you come out of this conference ignited and excited for action to move it forward. This goes right back to how I started with Hayovel. It's about that earth underneath your fingernails of the Holy Land. May God give us strength, and may God bless you, and may God bless this great country. May God bless the Jewish state, the land of Israel. Amen.
All right, and we're back here on the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from a hotel room outside of Nashville, Tennessee. That was my talk at the Israel Summit. I gave 7 suggestions about how folks around here, lovers of Israel from the nations, can be partners with Israel and with God's great mission. While I am out here fighting for Israel's light, the one and only Malka Fleisher is also fighting, and she went on ILTV to speak about Jewish rights in the land of Israel, and this time not to Gentiles but to Israelis in English, and she went to fight for what I think is common sense, that we should not be giving up our land and that we should be holding on to our land in Gaza, etc. And by the way, this reminds me that in the backdrop of all this, in the backdrop of me being in Tennessee to talk about these issues to pro-Israel nations, and Malka being in Israel, talking to our media and other people, and in the meantime, while we're talking about all this, Spain, Norway, and Ireland just declared that they recognize a Palestinian state in our land. So we are at cross purposes out there. There are people out there trying to erase Israel, erase our land, and replace it just like Hadrian did so long ago. That replacement continues today. Here is Malka Fleisher fighting for Jewish rights in the land of Israel and in Gaza on ILTV on a panel that she was invited onto.
Welcome to ILTV's Insider. I'm Steve Leibowitz.
And I'm Ayan Hoffman. Does Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have a plan for a day after? And if so, what does it look like? Would Israelis agree with his plan? And what are the options for a post-war Gaza? These are the questions burning on Israeli minds as we near 230 days of war and 128 hostages remain in the grips of Hamas.
But the topic became even more pressing after last week Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, in a televised address, challenged the Prime Minister to publicly reject Israeli civil or military rule in Gaza and advance a post-war plan. Netanyahu insists that Hamas must first be completely defeated before a post-war plan, and repeats the words, no Hamastan and no Fatahstan will rule in Gaza.
But Netanyahu has not said who will rule. Joining us to discuss the possible options for post-war Gaza are former Israeli diplomat Jeremy Issacharoff and Malka Fleisher, a settler activist and podcaster who is also the co-founder of a women's security committee in Judea, B'Yadayim Shelanu. Thank you for being here.
But before we begin our discussion, let's hear a snippet from Gallant's speech.
אבל כל עוד חמאס משמר את השליטה האזרחית ברצועת עזה, הוא עלול לשקם את כוחו, וצה"ל ייאלץ לשוב ולהילחם במקומות בהם כבר נלחם. לכן עלינו לחסל את יכולתו השלטונית של החמאס. המפתח לכך הוא פעילות צבאית וביסוס גורם שלטוני חלופי. בהיעדר חלופה כזו, ייוותרו רק שתי אפשרויות גרועות. שלטון חמאס בעזה או ממשל צבאי ישראלי בעזה. אי החלטה כמוה כבחירת אחת משתי החלופות הגרועות. היא תשחוק את ההישג הצבאי, תפחית את הלחץ על חמאס ותחבל בסיכויים להגיע למתווה לשחרור החטופים. מאז אוקטובר אני שב ומעלה את הנושא ברציפות בדיוני הקבינט המצומצם והמורחב ללא תשובה. היום שאחרי חמאס יושג רק על ידי שליטה של גורמים פלסטינים בליווי בינלאומי שיהוו חלופה שלטונית לחמאס. זה לפני הכל אינטרס ישראלי.
So I think we need to start out this discussion with a question for both of you. Gallant laid out a plan for the day after, but it is certainly not the only option. Jeremy, Malka, what do you think should happen in Gaza once the war ends? Jeremy, why don't we start with you?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I fully agree with what Defense Minister Gallant said. I believe, and I believe this since the 8th, 9th of October, that once we rebuffed the Hamas attack, we had to have in place a clear, coherent policy of how we pursue the war in Gaza, how we maintain control also in the West Bank, and also I'd also extend it to southern Lebanon with Hezbollah. And not to mention the Houthis in Yemen and the Iranian. We are in a multi-front war. You cannot fight a war just with military means. The military means have to serve a political purpose. So if you're fighting, you need to be pursuing a political objective, a political policy. And as far as I can see, we do not have a policy in place about what we do in Gaza once the war ends, and where do we go after that with the Palestinian problem in general.
So, Malka, what are your thoughts? What do you see?
I mean, I happen to agree that it's a great idea to know what you're doing before you start doing stuff. So I think that it's a good idea for our government to know where it's headed. I happen to totally disagree that creating a Palestinian-run state in Gaza is the right way forward for Israeli security. I mean, we're literally dealing with the last attempt to do that today. Many people have been murdered. Many people have fallen in battle. I just think that it's a horrible idea to bring in the very people. You know, you couldn't get the Palestinian Authority to condemn Jewish moms having their appendages sliced off in front of their children or shoving their kids in the oven. We couldn't get them to say that that was bad. So now we want to go and bring in some people we made peace with or made, agreements with over the last few months or years, have them work together with those same people and then put them in charge of security on our, southwestern border. To me, that sounds insane.
Malka, what is the long-term vision? I'm kind of old, so I finished my last reserve duty in Gaza in 1995, thinking, thank God, I don't have to come here again, and hopefully my kids wouldn't have to. Well, my kids did have to, and I had a son there in 2014 and so on. What's the long-term goal in Gaza? Are we going to be military occupiers in Gaza for the next years to come?
The goal here is, here we are talking about post-war Gaza. And what I think we should also be talking about is post-war Israel. Who are we after this experience? What did we learn from this? What is it that after many decades of beating a dead horse over and over again, what is it that we may have taken away that's a little bit different? In my opinion, it's time for us to get out of the same old rusty, tired, failed outlook which has led us here. It's time for us to understand that the whole region is itching for Israel to become a power. Israel is a moral and liberal place. It is a place that affords rights, and it is a place that also affords security. Its whole purpose, the whole purpose of the state, was to create a place where the Jewish people minimally should feel safe. Minimally the Jews, if not the other people who come live here, right? And that's not happening. Raison d'etre number one is not happening. So our long-term goal for Gaza has to align with those goals, which is we're not going to do a pushing back on making sure Hamas feels pressure. What do you mean Hamas feels pressure? The whole idea was that we are ending this. We are no longer going to put ourselves and the whole people of Israel in a situation where they're thinking about pressure on Gaza for the next 25 years. No more pressure on Gaza, finishing Hamas.
So let's say that we are not going to piggyback off of what you're saying here, and I'm going to turn back to you, Jeremy, for a minute, because your idea, is really the exact opposite. But let's talk about the Palestinian Authority. Mm-hmm. The Palestinian Authority, we know, is a totally corrupt organization that can't even manage its own people. How are you envisioning that this organization or any iteration with international collaboration would be able to rule in the Gaza Strip?
First of all, I think it's really crucial to understand that, what happened on October 7th is totally horrendous and unacceptable by any humanitarian standard, period. But having said that, I do not attribute everything that Hamas did on that day to every Palestinian. And I have had a lot of contacts with Palestinians over the years, and I don't accept the fact that every Palestinian is aligned to Hamas, number one. Number two, I don't understand how we can look at the alternatives. In the end of the day, we need to find a pathway to a credible political solution in which the Palestinians will be able to rule themselves. What are the alternatives? Do we incorporate all the territories into Israel, which ruins our idea of a Jewish democratic state? Do we resume the occupation of Gaza, which, in my opinion, would also mean not only security responsibility, but a civilian responsibility and reconstruction? And I hope somebody's going to be paying the taxpayers' money for that, because we are not going to be able to afford it. And again, I think the key factor here, which is something that we need to focus on, is that a pathway to a Palestinian solution does not mean a massive change tomorrow. It will take time, but it will firm up our relations with the United States, with our European allies. It could open a door of normalization with Saudi Arabia, extend also the Abraham Accords, and also the defense mechanism that we saw that rebuffed the Iranian attack. And I want to look, and I look at what happened on October 7th. It makes me cry every single day to this day. But we need to keep thinking with our heads and think what our policy should be. And that's where I think we need to go. We need to put a firm choice. We need to get the Palestinians back in control. And if the Palestinian Authority needs revitalizing, the Americans want to do that, and I think it can be done. And it can also be done with the help of the Gulf. But we need to accept something different than the path we've seen up till now.
So, Jeremy, let me ask you this, and also for you, Malka. Okay, Gallant said it himself. We're talking about this Palestinian entity. You're mentioning the Palestinian Authority or the other Palestinians that could potentially take over and rule in the area. So let's break that down. Maybe we have a security perimeter around Gaza, and we've given ourselves some space so we can watch. But in the end, who are these Palestinians, this entity that is going to rule us? Who are the international actors that you envision being able to come in and to make sure that we have security? And with that, if this happens, if that scenario plays out, Gallant's or Jeremy's scenario, are Israelis living in the South safe? Malka, why don't you start?
I just want to go back as part of an answer to that question to something that you said about how not every Palestinian supports Hamas. I was in Gaza in 2005 when we tried desperately. We screamed to anyone who would listen, please do not withdraw from Gush Katif. This is a strategic, not to mention a historic, but let's just put away, we're always lowering the standard, the importance of Jewish history in this discussion.
That was disengagement for those that
Right, the Gaza disengagement. But let's pretend that we have no history in Gaza for a second and just talk about the security issues. We were screaming, please do not pull out of here. Please do not do this to Israeli security. I'm still waiting for the emphatic, you were right, from the establishment, because look at what has happened to our country. I mean, look at the devastation. But I will say that we were there on the ground as activists trying to stop the Gaza expulsion. And my husband still remembers, I was talking to him about it just the other day, he still remembers from the other side of a certain security fence, Gaza Arabs standing there with their fingers through the gates saying, please don't go. Please don't pull out. You don't know what's waiting for you. And so I just want to say I agree that there is some population of people who want to live peacefully here in this country. And in my opinion, to put it shortly, the response is not to say, well, I guess we should probably have these guys over here deal with our security and good luck making a state and I'm sure it'll work out and like we'll have a hand in it, but also maybe not. And I don't think that that's the answer. I think Israel has to take charge. Israel has to take accountability, and Israel has to make sure that it knows how to divide between the people who want to annihilate the state of Israel, and there are many, and the people who absolutely do not.
Most of the people that are there today are either supporting Hamas or they're people that certainly were willing to tolerate Hamas. There will be Hamas during the next years to come. That will
which means that we have failed in our war goals.
Yeah, my question to you, though, is what is the solution? There are 2 million people there. I know, or I imagine, I don't know, I don't want to put these words into your mouth. I imagine that if the Rafah border was suddenly open and all of the Palestinians decided to flee to Sinai and leave, you wouldn't object. You wouldn't tell them not to.
Who would object to the free movement of people? If people want to walk out that way, why shouldn't they be able to?
A Gaza without Palestinians would be a lot easier to rule, wouldn't it? I mean,
okay, but that's so theoretical.
You would prefer it.
What I would prefer is that we not have a situation in which we allowed a buildup of 2 million people who are seethingly hating us. I would prefer that, but that's not our scenario. We are in a scenario that was built by Oslo, by this kind of talk, which is like about how we gotta, if we just empower them more, but maybe if we empower them more, maybe if we give them more power, and we've done this, and it's not working, and I understand that we have tax revenues, and everything has to pay, and someone has to pay for this, but in the end of the day, like, I don't want to hear, when someone talks to me about my basic security, my children, I don't want to hear someone say, well, what about the tax revenues?
Okay, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, I've also, over 40 years in the foreign ministry, met a number of Palestinians, also in Israel and also abroad. And also I've been involved in 2 different streams of discussions with Palestinians since October 7th. And I've heard from these friends who have said to me, you have never been an enemy to us like Hamas is to us. A lot of moderate secular Palestinians see Hamas as a vital danger to their way of life. And since October 7th, I've heard Palestinians saying what the Hamas did to you, they would do to us. And, don't underestimate the feeling and the power of the moderate Palestinians who want to have a normal life. Now, beyond that,
why can't we give them that normal life inside our country?
Well, first of all, we have to give them a political incentive. And that's why I think we need to have, and it's been said a number of times, a pathway to a 2-state solution, to any political solution that can give the Palestinians, moderate Palestinians, a stake in their own future. And more important, we need an alternative to Hamas. We need to fight a bad idea with a better idea.
But they voted for Hamas.
Who voted for Hamas? In Gaza, they threw them off the roofs. That is not the point. The point is, do we just accept this, not try and change anything, and just accept this dreadful reality? And I have to say, you said, that 2005 was a mistake. I want to know just how many people, Israeli soldiers, were saved in the years between 2005 and 2023. I would imagine we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people.
You're completely making it up. You have no idea.
I'm not.
Malka and Jeremy, I'm going to cut you both
off. But I need to say, Bodo, what happened on 2023 on October 7th was a total failure of this government from the policy echelon and the security echelon. So, that doesn't, make what happened in 2005 a mistake.
So I want to cut you guys off on this discussion because I want to move to a last question that I think is important. One of the things that we talked about, we just had U.S. officials, right, Sullivan, here in the country, coming from Saudi Arabia, speaking about the potential for normalization with Saudi Arabia in exchange for some kind of ceasefire, humanitarian aid, whatever else that's going to come with. So for both of you, do you envision that a post-war Gaza means normalization with Saudi Arabia? Is peace on the way? Jeremy, you start.
I think it could be, again, if we put what has been said, a credible pathway to a Palestinian solution. The Saudis and the other Arab countries, and I'm including here also Egypt and Jordan, will not come into a political context that entails the continuation of Israeli military occupation in Gaza. It's just not going to happen. And again, I emphasize, we need not only to discuss and sort out the situation in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, which has become very unstable recently. And you only need to see every day of attacks, both sides, which has become a very untenable situation.
I remember the comment that Netanyahu had made when the discussion was about normalization before October 7th. And Netanyahu was saying that the Palestinian issue doesn't really play too strongly into the Saudi thinking. Well, apparently it does now.
It does, and it will also play very strongly into our relationship with the United States and our ability to deal with the Iranian nuclear threat, which is right down the road. Iran has never been as advanced in its nuclear program as it is now.
Malka, do you have the same opinion? Does the day after come with normalization with the Saudis?
I think the Saudis are interested in us because we're becoming stronger and because we're taking more charge, not because we're just on the precipice of giving them the Palestinian state that we think that they want. I think that we, moreover, should understand that no one in this region, in the Middle East, thinks it's cool to team up with a country that is lame and doesn't secure its own borders. The Saudis are not interested in us because we're capitulators. The Saudis are interested in us because we are strong, because we have a strong army, and because we have the opportunity to make big changes in this area. I think that making Gaza a part of, like, please be friends with us, Saudi Arabia, is like the least cool Middle Eastern message that you could send out.
Well, I suppose after all the provocation, we should be going straight into war in the north right after this one stops. Otherwise, how are we going to reassert our deterrence?
I mean, you definitely have a lot of people who are not in their homes. You want to talk about untenable situations. I sleep great at night in Judea, but the people of Shlomi are living in hotels in Jerusalem right now.
I'm not justifying
So talking about what's a tenable situation, it's like the people of Judea are some of the most inspired, patriotic, army participating, building, growing doctors, lawyers, and they're one of every 10 people in this country. So to casually chuck Judea into this garbage that you threw Gaza into, Gaza we should deal with, and Judea and Samaria we should deal with, and put it all in a lump is
but I'm going to have to
right.
cut you off because we're really getting out of time here, and we don't have any more time for this discussion this evening. We really want to be able to thank our guests for coming. Both.
Not yet. We still have another 2.5 minutes to tell us.
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought we were getting cut off, so go ahead.
First of all, what Malka says, I don't think our deterrence is looking too good right now with 200,000 people displaced in the north. And I fully agree. Israel needs to be strong, and we are a strong country, and we can take risks for peace. And I guess what Malka's saying,
there's no evidence.
Malka, I didn't interrupt
all
you.
The evidence shows that what you're saying. All the previous evidence shows that you're wrong. Show me one piece of evidence that shows that giving over territory.
First of all, you haven't given one piece of evidence that you're right. And your evidence that you can show that is right led us to the 7th of October. Excuse me.
What led to the 7th of October?
The fact you're thinking that we can continue this occupation ad nauseum without
So it's our
any
fault.
change.
October 7th is our fault.
It's our fault that we didn't prevent it.
We didn't prevent it by what? Not giving them land?
We did not prevent it because we had no political policy on the table to solve this situation.
So it's the poor suffering of the poor Palestinians
Don't try and
that caused
twist my
October
words.
7th.
Don't try and twist my words.
You just said it's our fault that we didn't have a policy,
I said we should
and that's why 1,200
we
Jews
should
were
have
murdered on
prevented
October
7th by having a political policy on the table to deal with the Palestinian situation. Unless you want to remove them, deport them, or kill them all, they are going to be there, and we need a political solution, which you do not want to
Finally,
accept.
let me just throw out this, and we're just about out of time. Do we have a political leader to bring us either to your solution or to yours?
Political leadership is scarce these days. But I mean, it's not good. But I'm not so worried about it because I see that the people of Israel seem ideologically refreshed. This was a horrific nightmare, what happened to us, and we're still in it. Nonetheless, what it did is it enabled Israelis to shake off the old conceptia, that brought us the old concepts of decades already that we've been living
All right,
under.
just one final
and
word.
The people of Israel are healthier than ever today.
Jeremy, our leadership.
No, we don't have the Prime Minister now, in my opinion, and I've worked with him and I respect him, but he does not have a policy, and we need a policy now. And if that means having elections, we need to have elections as soon as possible.
Thank you both.
Okay, well, we are out of time now officially this evening, so definitely thank you, Malka, and thank you, Jeremy, for being here tonight.
And for more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching. Let's win the war and bring them home.
All right, we're back here on the Yishai Fleisher Show. I want to thank all the folks that support the show. You know, the folks at prohibitionpickle.co.il, making yummy food for everybody, making delightful kosher food, and you could support Israeli families by going to prohibitionpickle.co.il. Our good folks at Retro Watch Guy. Somebody asked me at the conference here, are you wearing your Retro Watch watch? I'm not. I'm wearing my regular Israeli watch, but still, I could be because it is a holiday today, Pesach Sheni, second Passover. So check out retrowatchguy.com. Check out our good friends at jewishpress.com. For putting out great news and putting out the Yishai Fleisher Show. And check out, of course, highonthehar.com to connect with the Temple Mount and the place that I work and so proudly work in, Hebron, the Jewish community of. And you can support the Tomb of the Moms and the Papas by going to hebronfund.org. And, of course, coming on one of our tours. And let's not forget Kosher Cycle Tours, which they're sponsoring great cycling events in Israel and around the world in style. So check that out, Kosher Cycle Tours, as well. All right, before we let you go, we still have the one and only inimitable Ben Bresky out there, and I just love the stuff that he's doing. And so many people tell me I love what Ben is, the history segments, and I'm particularly excited for this one because this is the story of Israel's civil aviation. I happen to have an interest in this field, and so I want to thank Ben so much for this segment about the beginnings of something that Israel is very proud of, which is flying. So here's the story of Israel's civil aviation as told by our one and only Ben Bresky.
This is a moment in Jewish history. Israeli aviation started from humble beginnings. Today, El Al, Israel's largest airline, is famous worldwide, and passengers can eat glatt kosher meals while watching the latest Israeli movies, TV shows, and even listen to Torah Parsha classes and Daf Yomi. El Al was born in 1948, along with the State of Israel, after it became independent from the British. Before that, many Jewish leaders saw the importance of air travel for the future Jewish state. Among them were the members of the Jabotinsky Aviation School, named in memory of the Zionist leader Zev Jabotinsky. His son and others created the school in the 1940s to help train future pilots. Interesting, in the 1930s, Zev Jabotinsky penned a poem called Song of El Al. The Hebrew phrase means upwards or to the skies. It is a hopeful poem written during a dark time in history. But this fun fact is not really where El Al Airline got its name. It came from David Remez, Israel's first transportation minister, and he got it from the Bible, Hosea chapter 11, verse 7. The first ever plane to land in Israel was flown by the famous French aviator Jules Védrine, who touched down near the beach of Tel Aviv in 1913 as part of an aviation contest. Védrine became the first person ever to fly more than 100 miles per hour. He had originally planned to land in Mikveh, Israel, the first newly created agricultural community in Israel. A landing strip was constructed there, but Védrine was blown off course and forced to land near Tel Aviv instead. The next day, after repairs, he took off for Mikveh, Israel, where he was greeted by a large crowd in what was dubbed the first international airport of Israel. But the real first international airport came in the 1920s with Atarot. This moshav, just north of Jerusalem, was populated by young idealistic Jewish pioneers who had purchased the land. and Levi Eshkol, who later became Israel's prime minister, was one of the pioneers there. But in 1931, the British wanted to expand their military airstrip. They expropriated the Jewish farmland, demolished many of the homes, and uprooted fruit orchards. In 1948, the Jordanians invaded and depopulated the rest of Atarot, looted and burned the homes, and paved over the Jewish cemetery. After the Six-Day War of 1967, Israelis were able to return to Atarot. The airport became Jerusalem Airport and served domestic flights. It was in operation all the way until the year 2000. David Ben-Gurion International Airport was built in 1934 near the city of Lod. This ancient city was called by the Greeks Lida, and that name still sticks today as all El Al flight codes begin with the letters LY. Many early aviators who sought to create modern Israeli air travel faced problems with the British. They denied permission to create a flight school. In 1933, aviation enthusiasts created the Flying Camel Club, and they studied airplane models and gliders. This morphed into the Aero Club of Israel. The Maccabiah Games, a Jewish sporting event, was held in 1935 in Tel Aviv, and this was an opportunity for Jewish amateur pilots from Germany to arrive with their gliders to compete. But the Jewish aviators wanted not just gliders, but powered airplanes. Dov Hoz was one of the early pioneers. He created Aviron Aviation Company in 1936. They trained pilots, although the British had declared that illegal, and used planes to gather information on planned attacks by anti-Jewish rioters and to deliver medical supplies during the riots. Sde Dov Airport was named in his memory. Early pilots were from other countries as they had better training. Many were from Mahal, Jewish volunteers from abroad. One of these was an American Jew who served in the United States Air Force during World War II, named Al Schwimmer. His newly formed Schwimmer Aviation in California purchased and refurbished war surplus transport aircraft. Schwimmer wanted to do something to help his fellow Jews, especially after the Holocaust, and especially now that Israel was fighting the War of Independence. He got his fellow Jewish World War II vets and non-Jewish vets as well to help transport planes to fledgling Israel. Because most countries engaged in an arms embargo, Schwimmer had to find more circuitous routes. One launching location was the newly built airport in Panama, and then from Czechoslovakia, who were aiding and supplying Israel, the planes landed to help the war effort, and later used to create the country's airlines. Al Schwimmer returns to the United States where he faced trial for breaking the Neutrality Act and stripped of his U.S. citizenship. He immigrated to Israel, where he founded Israel Aerospace Industries and headed it for the next several decades. Today, the Aero Club of Israel still exists and helps teach budding flight enthusiasts. Aviron Aviation morphed into Arkia, which today charters flights from Tel Aviv to Eilat and other short flights. And El Al has taken part in many dramatic events in Israel's history. These include many airlifts of Jewish communities that faced persecution, war, and famine in such places as Yemen, Ethiopia, and the Soviet Union. From a small start, Israel has become one of the most modern and respected in the fields of civilian and military aviation. And speaking of the Israeli Air Force, that's a podcast for another time. This has been a moment in Jewish history. Thank you to Yishai Fleisher. Thank you to all the listeners, and shalom.
Ben, thank you so much for that. That was really interesting and fabulous. That story is going to continue in next week's show as well, I hope. So thank you, Ben Bresky, for that. I'm looking out my window here at the mountains of Tennessee outside of Nashville, and it's raining right now. It's like a big rainstorm came, and it's actually quite beautiful and quite dramatic. And I thank you, Hashem, for showing me this beautiful world and the beautiful people in this world. And I want to thank these Tennessean mountains for reminding me of the mountains of Meron, and of Lag BaOmer and of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is coming up, and the celebration of the Jewish fire and of the Jewish Torah, which has overcome the Roman exile, which started 2,000 years ago, and yet Hashem has said it's time to come back and it's time to learn the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, and from Zion shall come forth Torah that is coming to fruition in our time. I want to bless you folks wherever you are. Please write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com. Support the Yishai Fleisher show through going to buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. Thank you for your care and your love and your prayers. They make a difference, and I pray for you and I bless you as well. Thank you so much, United States, for welcoming me and showing me the very, very best of what the United States has to offer, which is people who love God and love Israel. Stay tuned. More great stuff is on the way. Hashem's blessings to you on this Pesach Sheni, right before Lag BaOmer, on the way to Shavuot, on the way to Shabbat, on the road, always on the road to the land of Israel. God bless you wherever you are, and shalom.